Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice Radio. So with Celestial Storm about to be officially released in about a week's time, it's time to have a look at the top 10 cards from Celestial Storm. Not the easiest list to make today. There are quite a few honourable mentions that I'm going to run through very quickly indeed. All the translations here for the unreleased cards do of course come from the lovely David Hockman over at limitlesstcg.com/translations, but there are English versions of a bunch of these cards now. Yay! So in terms of honourable mentions, we've got Celesteela. Celesteela, as long as there are 6 total prize cards remaining, you can do 160 damage for a single metal energy. That's crazy. It's going to be good in metal decks. Sizzle-GX has a GX attack that can be used for all colorless energy that does 200 damage to an evolution Pokemon. That's really quite good. Plus the ability says you do 80 more damage if you got 100 or less remaining HP. And it's got an attack that does 80 damage for just 2 energy. This is going to fit into some steel decks, but it's also going to be teched in just for the GX attack that either hits a good weakness for colorless energy or can KO evolve Pokemon for a colorless energy. Sneasel might be my personal favorite card in the set. For 2 darkness energy or 1 counter energy, flip a coin for each Pokemon you have in play. This attack does 30 damage for each heads. The fact that it's got such low HP and a weakness to Buzzwole might mean it's never actually any good, but it's certainly something I'm going to be testing. It looks like a lot of fun. We're getting a new Deoxys, which has the same attack as the Mewtwo from Evolutions and therefore can be a counter for stuff like Buzzwole. It's not terribly exciting because we've had this attack before, and I'm still not 100% convinced it's the best Buzzwole counter, but it deserves an honourable mention. And Electro-GX, oh my goodness, if ever there was a card that was opening up the possibility for dumb things, it's Electro-GX. The ability says you can knock it out giving up a prize, but then you can attach 5 energy cards, not just energy, so stuff like double colorless is on the table here, to your non-EX, non-GX Pokemon in any way that you like. Sooner or later, someone's going to make a busted deck with this. And the cards that just missed the list. We've got Sceptile. Sceptile is a stage 2, which makes it kind of awkward to use, but all of your Pokemon with grass energy attached to them get immunity from Ultra Beast. That has got to be worth a test. Oricorio is infinitely exciting to me on a personal level because for a single lightning energy, 30 damage to each EX and GX in play, that does include your own. That's a lot of spread damage for 1 basic energy on a basic Pokemon. An energy recycle system's not the most exciting card ever, but it's Rescue Stretcher for basic energy. 1 to the hand or 3 to the deck. With Super Rod rotating out, you know this is going to see a whole bunch of play. And Manectric just got bumped off the list. A lot of people like Manectric. I am in that camp as well. People are talking about playing it with Zoroark, but it hits weakness on and has resistance to Buzzwole, which is pretty gosh darn nice. Then, of course, it's got an ability saying you can move a damage counter from 1 Pokemon in play to any other Pokemon in play. That's pretty nice. Then you've got an attack which does 30 damage plus 10 more for each supporter card in your discard, though you can add more than 100 in this way. But honestly, that shouldn't be a huge issue because when you're hitting for weakness with a choice band, you're not going to need many in the discard at all. And then the GX attack is the same as Decidueye-GX's Hollow Hunt, and a whole bunch of people have played that in the past. Maybe it will be good. Of course, it is weak to Zoroark, so skepticism not necessarily discouraged. So they're the cards that didn't make the list. What about the cards that did make the list? In at number 10, we've got Metagross. Now, Metagross is a card which got 170 HP, which is very high, does 60 damage for a single energy, which is not the most damage ever, but it opens up max potion plays quite nicely, and if you keep it in the active, it does 120 next turn. Yay! It does not keep adding, it only ever does 120. But it's the ability we love here. You can use Steven's Resolve without your turn ending. Spoiler alert, Steven's Resolve is going to be coming much higher up on this list. And a card that can use it without ending your turn? Yeah, That sounds pretty good to me. It can also be combined with Metagross-GX. I expect to see a whole bunch of Metagross decks running around. In at number 9, we've got Swampert. Now, Swampert's attack is actually a lot better than you might expect. 80 damage for free colourless energy, 20 more for each water energy attached to this Pokemon. Well, if you're hitting for weakness, against a non-GX you're doing 160, which should KO them all, and against a GX you had a choice band, you're doing 220, and that should KO them all. Think Turtonator, for instance. It's actually a really nice attack if you're hitting for weakness using just colourless energy. But the attack says discard a card from your hand and draw 3. It's like Zoroark, but you draw extra cards. Yeah, that sounds alright by me. In at number 8, we've got Manectric. Manectric, ladies and gentlemen, is a very exciting Pokemon. You can play it down even though it's a stage 2 at the beginning of your game, not unlike Talonflame. The thing to remember is this can go into the active or on the bench, whereas Talonflame could only go active. But this can only be used if you're going second, not if you're going first. It's got free retreat, and for 1 lightning energy you do 40 damage and attach 2 basic energy from your hand to one of your benched Pokemon. You've got to use lightning energy to pay the attack cost, but you can accelerate energy which isn't lightning. It's a good setup attack just like Talonflame was, and I expect it to see a bunch of play just like Talonflame has. In at number 7, Stakataka-GX, a Pokemon that initially looks slightly underwhelming. The attacks are not particularly good. I mean, free energy, 50 damage plus 50 more for each prize card you've taken. Yeah, in the late game when you've taken a bunch of prizes, fine, but really, not a huge fan of it. But the ability here says that your Ultra Beast Pokemon take 10 damage less from attacks. It's okay. Until you start getting 3 or 4 Stakataka on the bench, then your GXs are taking 30 or 40 less damage from attacks, and then it's starting to look very, very nice indeed. This is going to see play with Naganadel. I showed you a little while ago a video about this winning a Worlds format tournament, going undefeated in the process. I'll pop a link to that video in the description, and as we're here, I've done videos on all the cards featured in this video. I will pop a whole bunch of links in the description, so if you ever want to have a proper deep rundown on any of these cards, that's how you can do so. In at number 6, we've got Dunsparce. I am currently undecided as to exactly how much play I think Dunsparce is going to see, but it's a basic Pokemon that for 1 colourless energy gets 3 basic Pokemon onto the bench, and you switch Dunsparce with your active. You get any basics out you like, and then you get to leave one of them active. Maybe you grab a Tapu Koko and leave it active, because it's got 110 HP and free retreat. In a world without Bridget, which is the world we're moving into, we're going to need a way to get our basics out. And although this is an attack, meaning we can't, for instance, use Bridget and then use Beacon with something like an Alolan Vulpix, I still think this is going to see a lot of play, though I don't imagine it will be a staple in every single deck. In at number 5, kind of boringly, Copycat and Tate and Liza. Cards which I expect to be replaced at some point in a not too distant future. Tate and Liza is a choice. You either get to use a Shauna, shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 5 cards, or you get to use a switch. And it's going to largely see players draw power, although having a switch on hand isn't the end of the world. Kind of like how we play Guzma as a gusting effect, but it's a switch as well, which is quite nice. No, it's not particularly great. It's not as good as Cynthia. But when the rotation hits and we've basically got Cynthia and nothing else, I assure you Tate and Liza's going to see a whole bunch of play. As is Copycat. Shuffle your hand into your deck and draw a number of cards equal to your opponent. Your opponent can screw you out of Copycat by just having 1 card in their hand, and then boo, hiss, etc. But we're moving into a format that just doesn't have a whole bunch of options in terms of draw supporters. These two aren't great, and at some point fairly soon we'll get better stuff released, which replaces them, but until then they're essential cards. In at number 4, Shrine of Punishments, a stadium card which I think is going to be one of the most played in the entire format. It puts 1 damage counter on EX and GX Pokemon between turns. It's huge. Something like a Tapu Bulu can now get a KO on a Buzzwole, without needing to search out its choice band. Or it can get a KO with its GX attack, which it couldn't do before. There's a whole bunch of Pokemon out there that have 190 HP rather than 180. Or Pokemon that can do 200 damage when Zoroark's got 210 HP. You can use it in a non-GX deck just to spread some damage around the field between turns, putting potentially up to 6 damage counters on the field between turns. But you can also use it to hit the numbers here. This is really the part of the video where we move into the phenomenal cards part of the video, and I really do think Shrine of Punishments is a phenomenal card. In at number 3, the aforementioned Steven's Resolve. You get to search your deck for any free cards, put them into your hand, and then your turn ends. If ending your turn made supporter cards unplayable, Kiawe wouldn't be seeing any play. But it is. We've got N rotating out, so people are less likely to disrupt your hand than they are at the moment. And with any free cards, you can really get set up. You can search for 2 rare candy in a stage 2 when you've got 1 of the stage 2 in your hand. And then next turn, you've got 2 stage 2s coming. It really is good. With Metagross as well, it just goes to a next level, being that you don't have to end your turn. We can no longer Tapu Lele for a bridge at turn 1. I think there are a whole bunch of decks that are going to Tapu Lele for a Steven's Resolve. Or it's the middle of the game and you've got absolutely nothing, so you grab a Steven's Resolve. It's not going to be a 3 or 4 of in every deck, but especially when you can't attack turn 1 anyway, I really do expect it to be a 1 of in almost every deck come post-rotation. I could be wrong, but that's my prediction. In at number 2, Magcargo. It's a reprint of the old one, although with slightly more HP, and it means that once per turn you can search for any card and put it on top of your deck. That's great. We've got a Magcargo-GX coming up in the not too distant future, whereby you discard the top card of your deck, and if it's a basic energy, you attach it to one of your Pokemon. That'll combo nicely with this. If you're playing Zoroark, you can search out any card you like and know you're going to draw it. Or if you're playing something like an Alolan Sandslash, or even if you just got an Acro Bike in hand. It's a crazy, crazy good card. It is going to see a lot of play, and it is going to see a lot of success. If you can afford to play it, as in deck space, bench space, etc., you are going to. But in at number 1, I'm cheating a bit and putting a pair of cards because honestly they go hand in hand. Rayquaza-GX and Latias Prism Star. Rayquaza's not as good without Latias, and Latias has no good partners other than Rayquaza. Latias, for a single energy, says that you can do 30 damage and then attach a basic energy from your discard pile to each of your benched basic dragon Pokemon. You can be getting 5 extra energy per turn onto the field. It's crazy good. It's a kind of Prism Star we want. It's so good, it has to be a Prism Star so that it isn't broken. Then you bring in Rayquaza-GX, that for a grass, lightning, colourless does 30 damage for each basic grass and lightning energy attached to all of your Pokemon. Meaning if Latias is able to get 5 extra energy out, you're doing an extra 150 damage. And then when Rayquaza goes down, you're only losing 3 of those energy. There are plenty more. Plus the ability says when you bench it, you can discard the top 3 cards of your deck, which is risky because it's a blind discard. But then attach a basic energy from your discard to this Pokemon, and a GX attack for 1 energy that discards your entire hand and draws 10 cards. I mean, look, you're not going to want to use that every game, just like you don't want to use Dramper's Big Wheel every game, but when you need it, you are so happy it's there. Especially at Worlds where we've still got stuff like Max Elixir, this is over the top good. I know a lot of people, it's quite trendy at the moment to go, I don't think Rayquaza's that good. I think Rayquaza's overhyped, because it's kind of trendy to say an overhyped card isn't actually that good. The first tournament where it was legal in Japan, it won in all 3 age divisions. I don't need to argue this point too much because Worlds is coming up in a month, and I'm not saying it's going to win Worlds, but I am saying the deck as a whole is going to have a very big showing. It remains to be seen whether it can remain good when Max Elixir rotates. I'm still not convinced Vikavoult's the answer, but at least for the time being, these are the best cards from Celestial Storm. But maybe you disagree with me, in which case, fine, let's get a nice healthy discussion going in the comment section. Although do remember the rule, be nice. And you know that I will love you forever if you are kind enough to put a complete top 10 list down below. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter or the Wasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourself. Until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.